Hello everyone, this is Greyshot17. I'm doing a thoughts on video, this time on Gears Tactics. It's been a while since I've done one of these. Not because I didn't want to do it, I've absolutely wanted to do another thoughts on video, but unfortunately many delays for many different reasons caused me to delay doing a thoughts on video, because I was originally going to do it back at the end of May. And then some stuff happened, and after that, I just had to catch up on stuff, and eventually also had to finish the game. And yeah, this game is also very long, and we'll kind of get into that, but finally, I have a thoughts on the entirety of the game, and I kind of want to just bring you my opinion of it. Again, sorry for the delay, but let's get into it. So, for a little background history of this game, for those who don't know, Microsoft has been dabbling with strategy games with its main properties for a little bit of time. The tactics genre has been reinvented ever since XCOM Enemy Unknown, and you've had other games come out, again, such as Mutants, Year Zero, or you've had XCOM 2 that's come out, and other sort of cash grabby games. Like I remember there was a game, oh god, this is really hitting home. There was a tactics game for Falling Skies, an alien invasion show on TNT. So yeah, it's a genre that has come back in full force, which I'm very happy about, but also because of the amount of properties, it's sort of hard to find that one that does it as well as XCOM. So Gears is trying, to come up to bat and say, hey, we can deal with XCOM in our own way. And does it succeed in that, or does it fail like many other tactics games? But in any case, let's get into the presentation, because that's the main thing. Halo Wars had the feel of a Halo game. That's how it helped succeed. Gears Tactics does the same vein that any Gears of War game. Not only is it very, very striking in terms of its visual presentation, I thoroughly enjoyed this game because it honestly felt like you were playing Gears of War. I wouldn't say it looks as good as maybe Gears 5, but if you're looking at something maybe of the previous property or something along those lines, I would say it matches toe for toe and looks pretty damn good, especially on those cutscenes. My god, again, those cutscenes and also the animations they have where you get close-ups on these models look really, really good, and they capture Sarah, aka the world that Gears is on, extremely well. There's multiple different areas that you visit. You get more like tropical-esque, like beachfront areas, like destroyed, decayed cities. Look, everything is destroyed in Gears because of story reasons, but the point of the matter is, it's not just the same city environment. They open it up, and as the game progresses, you do get more environments. I'm of the opinion that they do enough with what they have, though I will say it starts getting a little similar toward the very end of the game, and I wish they would have maybe opened up a corridor here or there to kind of liven things up. Maybe a forested area would have been really cool, but for what they have, I would say they did a very good job at least making it so that way every single environment is not the same environment that you go through the entirety of the game. I think that would have been a really bad mistake, where I feel like a lot of games will be like, hey, we're set in the tundra, and I'm like, okay, that's great, but if you're not going to use the tundra in a good way, then I don't care. In this environment, it looks really damn good. No matter where you are, I would say it runs well, it performs well, especially at 4K. I know this game is supposedly coming to Xbox Series X. Oh god, that name. But the point of the matter is, it's coming out there, and it's like, okay, if it's going to run on a console, even a next-gen console, it has to, well, have good performance. And luckily, at least on my graphics settings, which again, I may not have the most advanced stuff on my computer, but it's still a decently beefy computer even after a few years, I was running no problem 4K 60, even when recording in some instances. I will say there was a couple instances where it did go under 60, but again, that could be just my performance in terms of my ordered PC. But overall, and that's also with capture equipment and Discord running in the background, but yeah, it ran extremely well, and I was surprised by that, honestly and truly, because there was some parts of this where I accidentally was streaming it at the high level. I'm like, oh, it's actually running really well. So yeah, no, I tip my hat off to these guys for at least making a port that runs well, at least on my PC. I know it can sometimes change. Now, that being said, it's not flawless. There's definitely some bugs that I had with this game, although very few. Most of them can resolve or revolve around a grenade going missing in the terrain on the early levels, and then this weird thing where I couldn't kill a locust, but I just reloaded totally fine. overall, there wasn't too many glitches to notice, but there was one or two, and I figure I'll let you know. Now, with the sound and the music of this game, I will say that they also capture gears. A lot of again, you have a lot of bass Gears sort of sounds, like the chainsaw and like the guitar riff, and other things like that, where especially once you complete like a whole enemy campaign and kill all the guys and you just hear that awesome riff, they capture a lot of core concepts, and just like Halo Wars, they do a really good job making this not only look like Gears but sound like Gears. Also, I would say the voice acting I really did actually enjoy.
Would you please explain to me what the fuck that was? You owe me an answer. I don't owe you shit.
But I feel like everyone did their part. There wasn't an exceptional performance, though. I will say that. The closest one I would say maybe is Sid, and that's its own can of worms on that part, but everyone was good. Again, the Locusts sound like Locusts, and they did a really good job in that department. Also, a good musical score that kind of represents Gears. I wouldn't say it's my favorite out of the Gears genre. I would probably say Gears 2 or 3 probably as my favorite musical moments, probably leaning toward Gears 2, but I will say it does a really good job at least sounding like Gears and having a good soundtrack while you're cutting down enemy locusts, which you're doing so part of the story, and the story is essentially you have to kill this big bag locust. And why do you have to kill him?
Ashamed to leave, just as things are getting interesting.
Well, he's making other abominations, and they're kind of causing a lot of havoc for a lot of the Gears, aka the COG army, and you have to take it out while behind enemy lines. Again, kind of a story that sets up smaller squad sizes, so that kind of makes sense. But I do wish maybe the story interacted with more of the main force of the COG, but you do get some glimpses of that throughout the campaign, but I would have liked more direct correlations. But I will say this, Halo Wars 2, I liked one story, I did not like this. This is somewhere in the middle. I like the fact that it's similar to Halo Wars 1, where it has a close, which thank God, it has some really great cutscenes and some really great moments, and does a pretty good job, at least with the core set of characters, that they do throw in a late entry into this. I will say that was a little unexpected, but they do have some ties to Gears both in the beginning of the game and end of the game that links for stuff further on, whether if you know it or not. So I did like that. I did enjoy those little connection points. So if you are a fan of Gears, whether in the first original trilogy or the newer Gears games, they have links to both. So I did enjoy that. The boss is also in this, because again, this boss locust that you're trying to hunt down, I would say maybe slightly disappointing, though again, I feel like he's fine. He's not as bad or like Steppenwolf in terms of my villain. Steppenwolf is like the example of a terrible villain, number one, worse than a lot of Marvel villains other than like maybe Dark World, but he's not as intimidating as Atriox, though he does have some moments that shed some light on him, but I wish you either A, knew more about him, or B, the story went to more depth, because while there are moments where it's really nice that you get to learn more about the characters and you have some moments, and there are some banter in the missions, unfortunately it's a situation where you could go on a story mission and not much is generally happening, and unfortunately that's one key issue. As much as I like some of the characters, unfortunately the issue came from the fact that a lot of the story missions didn't have a ton of story. Some did, and it did have an impact. Some of them did not, and I wish they would have kind of threw more stuff in there. That would have really, really helped. But throughout the 3 acts, I did enjoy myself, though I will say the 3rd act is a little bit weaker, but not because of the story, but more gameplay. And so speaking of gameplay, oh my god. Look, I'm not saying this XCOM 2 has to worry about Gears Tactics, but Gears Tactics, in my opinion, is more fun to play than XCOM. Simply put, because XCOM, you have a lot of key strategies that is essentially the whole back with the snipers and just pick everyone off or something along those lines. Sometimes, and again, you're just sort of going back and forth with some shooting combat. There are some hand-to-hand moments in XCOM that you can do stuff in. Like I believe the Tempest faction have those bionic sort of psychic swords that they kind of deploy, which are awesome. But you mostly just shoot back and forth. Gears, it's a lot more visceral. There's bayonets, there's chainsaws, there's all sorts of stuff, and they actually do affect gameplay. They do a really nice thing where every time you use one of those things, or you take out an enemy that's on its last legs and you curb stomp him and get that execution, it actually benefits your team and gives you an extra action point. That is awesome. Other things would be like a reload could give you additional damage on the opponent through skills, stuff like that, where they bring in like these basic ideas from the previous Gears games and bring them into this, include them in tactics format. I thoroughly enjoyed. And you do have some other things, like again, they throw in so many different perks and abilities, from invisibility to pushing forward, chainsaws, bayonets, dashing, all sorts of these awesome bonus things. And what I like about the gameplay is it's not linked to like, okay, first you shoot or move, or do you just want to double move? Sort of like XCOM. I keep running to XCOM because it's the most direct comparison I can think of. There's some other games, but I feel like this is more in that core concept enough where it's a good direct comparison. Anyway, the nice thing about this is every unit has an action point, and they can range depending on the character and also the abilities they have, as well as the mission, which can increase or decrease abilities. But point of the matter is, every action point you can do an ability, which may cause 1 or 2 action points, or you can shoot, or you can do like an Overwatch move. And by God, I love Overwatch. It's not just generally anything in view. You actually have to aim the parameters at which the shot's gonna hit. So a sniper is a very small but very long range Overwatch shot, whereas let's say normal troops have, let's say with a normal Lancer, just have a more generalized but still pretty decent range for their weapons, and I thoroughly enjoyed that. Now I will say this, every single person has a sort of class that they can kind of go with. You can't exactly give someone else a weapon that would fundamentally change their class. Some classes you can tag team with their Lancer or Bayonet to increase action points, or you do the execution to help you out your team. It's really good because the whole point of this game is you keep charging forward. It keeps you in the midst of combat, and it's, even though I thought early on that maybe grenades were slightly overused or anything like that, there's different abilities and different stuff that pop up that actually make the grenades less likely to be used, and there are cooldowns to using grenades, so you can't just keep using them. But yeah, it's one of those things where I thoroughly enjoyed all the different abilities, all the different stuff, and all the classes I liked. Every single one had a purpose. Even Scout, which I thought would be the weakest out of the bunch, turned out to be one of my favorites just because of the fact once I picked out a skill tree. Now I will say this, just like XCOM, there are different skills I think are better than others. Specifically the Scout, there was one that was more of a like invisibility I didn't care for, but that also relied on sprint. Then I flipped it and did more of exertion with shooting and double shots, and oh my god, that thing turned into a monster. Same thing with a lot of the Vanguard and a lot of the just all the different support weapons. And even the sniper, I had a sniper class that literally whole objective was getting a hit, and if it got a hit and or kill, it could then get more action points. So my sniper was literally by itself soloing everyone on the front. Now you could say, well, Greyshot, how's that different from XCOM, from you just standing back and shooting? Well, I'll say this, because you have to tag team with other units, and just like picking off units and then getting the execution to then get additional abilities that allows the sniper to use one more shot to get a full range of abilities back, or using the certain heals and other things like that to just keep pushing forward and just breaking down the enemy. And it's not like the enemy are weak. These enemy, especially early on, and note, I was just playing on hardcore. If you play on this on Insane or like a higher difficulty, yes, you are definitely going to be in for a hard challenge. And they do have an Iron Man mode, so if you're looking for something similar to XCOM, you're in luck. But these enemy types, I will say, are pretty brutal. I won't say there isn't something like a Berserker. I will say that there isn't a Berserker, and I was disappointed with that, although kind of curious how you would fight that thing. But what I will say is all the different locust strikes, from the wretches to the drones to everything else, have their certain perks and negatives that you have to work through. There might be a shotgun sort of locust that it's like, okay, I'll just charge him because he has so much health, but you have to shoot him first because otherwise he will just smack you away and shotgun you in the face. It's great. There's also boomers that literally are very slow but have a high explosive yield. And also, when you kill a locust with special weapons, you can pick them up, like the torque bow or the boom shot, or like all these other different abilities. So in that area, again, there's all sorts of these tactics, which is why I loved the gameplay. And also, there's all different ways you can engage a combat scenario. I can't say you can sneak upon them as sense, unless you're doing some invisibility and sneaking up behind them, that way they don't shoot you. But there's also objectives where, let's say they have you on Overwatch, well, I just have my one guy use an ability to cancel everyone's Overwatch, or like essentially in the vicinity of that person, and they just bayonet one, shoot another guy in the face after taking out one. And also there's buffs and negatives that you get when doing these specials that can decrease people's accuracy, increase damage done, all this stuff. And the enemy can do that on you as well, such as, let's say, marking you for a target, or increasing the locust defense based on if they have a Theron or anything like that, kind of boosting their morale. All sorts of really interesting stuff. And as well, in these different locusts, they do ramp up to where at the end of every act you verse a boss, and they live up to their potential. Fighting these bosses was incredibly fun. They have good variety to them. They're each unique, they're each different, and there isn't a simple way to cheese it. They all have, at least that I could find. And actually, once you're learning this game, that first act, I will say, is probably the hardest out of the rest of the acts, because once you get to a point where your guys start getting more powerful, it seems like, okay, I'm starting to win. But no, they do a thing where there's different missions. And you have missions such as the main objective missions, where you send your team in and they come back. While the main cast can't die, your secondary cast can. So, and you can design that secondary cast to whatever you're liking. So if you would like a full badass team of, let's say, female snipers going at it, you can absolutely do that based on the requisition and getting those people. But if they're on a mission and then there's another mission you have to do, that team's already out. So you have to rely on a second team and a third team. And this requires you to either spread out your best guys with some of the newer recruits and kind of level it out, or send your new guys in and just hope your recruits come back alive, because there are many times in this where I honestly send recruits in, I'm like, they have this mission, and they brutally die. So yes, your guys can die except for the main cast. And that sucks when you lose, let's say, because I had my Patreon supporters up and ready to go, and I did lose some of them. I had to make some different variations of them later on. So again, just something on that. Though I will say this, those are mainly the side objectives, and I will say the side objectives are probably the weakest aspect. There are different missions that allow different scenarios based on secondary objectives or secondary points, such as, let's say, decreasing your action points or increasing damage, or not letting you use grenades for that round, that make it substantially harder for you. But I don't think there's enough variety in terms of what is actually changed in the base mission. There is enough mission variety. There's like a objective where you're being hit by, was it necrocysts? Anyway, essentially artillery rounds, and you have to keep moving up the battlefield. Times you have to rescue people, times where you have to plant a bomb, times where you just have to kill everyone in the area. There's different points on the map for you to kind of go through. I just wish there was more, because by the third act with all the side missions, that's where the tedious gameplay started to come into effect, where it wasn't the gameplay itself was bad, it was the side mission objectives I just felt were starting to run a little old. Though I will say this, I was running through it in a pretty good sprint, just trying to get to the end, and I think that if you lay a little bit of time to go through these missions, you might have more enjoyment than I would, than trying to run right through them. But I will say that it was a gripe, and if you are playing a few missions a day, then it will start to maybe hit you a little more. But I could also say the same thing about XCOM, where toward the end I'm like, okay, it's another target mission, and I'm okay with this. But I will say there's enough variety, there's enough different locusts that you aren't versing the same set of enemies over and over. They tried to open it up a little bit, and that providing the different locusts and different abilities provide enough gameplay differences to make it fun. So that's a negative, I'd say, some of the side objectives, which is more mixed. Another mixed thing is the loot boxes in this. And I say loot boxes because you get boxes that could also be objectives to collect boxes, and then you get loot that you can equip to your men with it, so that slowly increases them in terms of power. So let's say more damage versus, let's say, minusing a certain ammunition type, or other small things that you can slowly upgrade your men with, as they slowly not only gain abilities for their different points, but also they gain armor bonuses, like, again, extra defense with let's say legs, or you get extra armor and additional sprint abilities, like all these different nice little perks with your armor set. But one thing I will say is a negative about that is it's a little bit frustrating on the equip side of that, at least I found. Again, nothing too detrimental, but I will say it was a bit weird. The good news is, as far as I can tell, I'm also not a big loot fan, so that's why I'm like, for that, I'm like, it's fine. I'd rather kind of upgrade my base, and that kind of gets to some situation. But as far as I can tell, there's no ability to pay to just make your men great. You have to work at it, which I'll say, I'll give this game. Good job, no microtransactions, like another strategy game Microsoft released. Now, there is a negative in terms of gameplay, and while the gameplay on the battlefield's great, don't expect to be base building and researching for a better Lancer. There's none of that. When you get back to base, you can customize your soldiers, and you can like make them however you want. You can give them different armor types and choose your missions, but that's about it. You're not like doing a tech upgrade or autopsies like XCOM. It's basically just, here's your tactics game, and in terms of like combat, and then you can do a little bit of customizations and such, and then choose your missions. That's about it. Which I will say is a bit of a negative, because the thing about XCOM that does really well is you do that the main missions, but you also come back to your base, and it's just kind of tinkering around. Now, I get why they didn't do that, because in terms of story, it might, in how it's designed with the different levels, it might be a little difficult to do it, because XCOM is a little more, yes, there is a progression in the story, but it's not in this vein where it's like different acts for different missions. But I still think maybe a certain upgrade or certain tech wouldn't be a bad idea. With this, they just don't have anything, so you're not building bases or anything. You do have like this convoy you deploy from, but that's about it. And combine that with a little bit of the mission variety, being pretty good, but because there isn't anything to balance it, that's where some of the playing these missions over and over and over again without any reprieve, without doing any of the tech stuff or upgrade stuff or buying stuff in terms of like a base or operational command, that's where it starts to hit. Though I will say again, the story was good enough to get pulled me through. It's not the best story, and I do think that if I have to say like what impacts me more, Halo Wars or Gears Tactics, I will say I liked Halo Wars' story more, though I will 100% understand that those, I probably prefer those because more of the cinematic quality and the story in turn with that rather than Gears. Gears, I would probably say I had more fun playing in minute-to-minute combat with this game. So I really enjoyed for the tactics side. Alright, so for $60, is this game worth it? Well, I would say yes. If you like tactics games in the vein of XCOM or XCOM 2, I recommend it. There is some end game level stuff you can kind of keep grinding out with your men and your forces, and they increase the difficulty. So if you really like the core combat and you want to play more, they definitely have some things for you to keep upgrading your men for. Now, do I think this is as good as XCOM? I wouldn't say that, which may make a hard sell because the amount of content XCOM has. But here's the thing, I still think the core combat is good enough or better than XCOM in that variety, and I do think there is a level of difficulty with this game, especially on hardcore or higher, and especially if you throw in Iron Man, that a lot of people will probably enjoy. So there's that. But there's a counterpoint. This game is available, again, Steam, $60, I'm assuming on Xbox Series X for $60 or whatever it's going to be, but also you can buy it on Microsoft Store and or just use Game Pass on the Microsoft either Windows Store or on the console that I guess will eventually come out. And the thing about that is, for PC, it's $5 a month. So essentially, if you think that you're not going to be playing this game after you beat it, you could pay $5 for the month, play this game, and then just move on. So for that, I would 100% recommend this game, as well as on the Microsoft Store. I know there's other strategy games like Mutant Year Zero or Road to Eden, something like that is on there. I know that's another tactics game, so if you're interested in Gears Tactics and you want more tactics games or stuff like that, but also there's Halo Wars on there and other things. So if you're looking at this from a Game Pass perspective, it's a no-duh 100% yes, and especially just trying it out, I would 100%, because again, with Game Pass, you just download it, try it, and if you don't like it, move on to something else. But I get it, Microsoft Store is not 100% best, the UI on their store is not as fluid as Steam, but there is a lot going there, I would say, for Game Pass if you're going to get it there. So it's really up to you where you want it. But anyway, that's going to be it. I hopefully brought enough info for you guys to make a good decision on this game if you are interested in it. I know it's slightly later than I want to be, but hey, I want to get this to you because I do recommend this game, especially if you really like hardcore tactics games that are just really brutal on your face and you enjoy more visceral combat. That's 100% with this game. Just don't expect base building or maybe the most in-depth story from this game. But I still enjoyed the story enough to where I was pulled through. But in any case, what do you guys think? Have you played Gears Tactics? Let me know in the comments down below. But this has been Greyshot17, and I'll see you all next time. Hello everyone, this is Greyshot17, and before I go, I want to give a special shout out to Patreon supporters Milam, Joey G240, Anton, Bishara, Ion, PyroShark, Ace, and Jakub. Seriously guys, thank you so much for your amazing support, especially over the past month. Been through a lot of personal hurdles, but you guys make it a little easier knowing that you guys support me. And same thing with the patrons down below. This has been Greyshot17 and his amazing patrons, and I'll see all of you next time.